Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. It is your girl Anifa, and today we're going to talk about another mid-20s crisis that I've experienced, unfortunately. But I wanted to create this video so that I could relate to other people, because I know times are hard and I know this is a topic that a lot of people are going to relate to. And this is one of those things that, like, if you're going through, like, it's nice to hear the perspective of another person that has experienced it. So today's topic is overcoming a mid-20s crisis, moving back home with your parents. Okay, so let's talk about this, because I have experienced moving back home 2 times, and it's actually about to be a 3rd time very soon. So let's just kind of talk about it, just to give you guys a backstory about my relationship with my parents and, you know, what moving back the first time actually meant for me. So backstory to when I was younger, before going to college. I have always had like a rocky relationship with my parents. I'm just someone who's very like I fight back. If I don't agree with something, I like to speak up for myself. And in particular, my dad, he's someone who has very strong, stubborn and just like conservative rules when you live in his house. So growing up, me and him, we just didn't get along, and I moved out very early in life. Like, most people wouldn't move out at the age that I moved out. I moved out when I was 18 years old. I was still in high school when I moved out. I'm a little bit older than what I should be. Like, I'm a year older than my grade, at least at the time. So, you know, when a lot of people are 17 and they're in high school, I was 18. Senior year had just started for me. So that's when I moved out. I moved in with some friends, and honestly, I was so blessed because my friends took me on, and I am like forever grateful for them for letting me stay with them that year and finishing my high school with them. So again, moving out was not really like a happy moment for me. It was a bit traumatic. But I moved out at 18, moved in with friends, finished senior year, and honestly, that motivated me to really try hard and get into college, because I saw college as like, okay, this is going to be the next 4 years of my life where I'm going to be using this place for housing. So yes, I used college as housing. I didn't go home for winter breaks or summer breaks. I was on that college campus all 4 years. So I moved out of my parents, lived with my friends for a year, and then for college, I lived on campus the whole entire 4 years. And, you know, everything was going accordingly to plan until COVID happened. So this is where my first moving back home happens, right at COVID. So like, this happened in June 2020. So I had managed to not have to move back home until this moment. I honestly thought by the time that I was gonna graduate from my bachelor's degree, that I would find a full-time job and I would be able to support myself and be able to move into my old place. But obviously that didn't happen. March 2020, COVID happens, the world shuts down. I'm still living on campus for a couple months trying to figure it out. And honestly, that was one of the most stressful times of my life, trying to figure out whether I was going to be able to find a job full time that would support me, or if I needed to move back home. And unfortunately, as luck would have it, I would have to move back home for the very first time in 5 years. And so honestly, I know how it feels to like work really hard not to have to move back home, only to find yourself moving back home. And so the first time that I moved back home, what were my reasons for moving back home? I couldn't find a job that I could work full time that could support me. I had no other option. And in this situation, I had also gone through like a lot of drama in my senior year of college, and I was so exhausted. Like, I honestly just wanted to go somewhere and just be myself and heal and work on myself. And at the time, moving back home just made the most sense. How did it go moving back home the first time? There was a lot of healing that was happening the first time. I was getting used to being around my family again and rebuilding my relationship with my mom. And Yeah, like the first time was a lot of healing. I would say the first time, surprisingly, it went a lot better than what I expected. Like, I remember thinking like, this is not as bad as I expected. And that's the thing too. Like, when you're moving back home, like, there's so much on your mind. And I think for me, at that time, I didn't realize how easy it would be. But moving back home, like, surprisingly, when you leave home and you come back after a couple of years, you're no longer the young version of yourself that your parents could just like kind of like push around. I do feel like your parents kind of know like, okay, she's older, she has her degree now, and they backed off a little bit. And also I was no longer in the mentality of like, I hate living at home, I want my own space. Like, I've had my own space at that time. I had like a lot of time to be alone and to like really grow into like my own person. So moving back home at that time honestly was not that bad. The benefit of moving back home at the time, it really gave me the time to find a job that I was really passionate about. And this is something that I'm gonna say about moving back home. Like, if you're someone who really wants to be in a more fulfilled career and you can deal with moving back home, I know this is not the case for everyone, but if you can, it honestly gives you the time to really, really find a job that's like in your field or something that you're just more passionate about. Like, and if you do move back home, please take the time to just discover yourself, figure out what you want out of life, and take your time. Like, that is something that is a pro that I feel like a lot of people just underestimate, the ability to just have the time to slow down and choose and be a little bit more pickier. So yeah, that first time, a lot of healing. I don't know why, but I just don't remember much about that time. I just remember it just not being as bad as I expected. But I do remember towards the end of it, I was just tired. I was ready to leave. Like 6 months after, I was ready to leave. And as soon as I got a full-time job, I was like, bye. And I think it's because honestly, that house was very small. Yeah, the house was very, like the house that we were living in, like all my siblings at the time had moved back home or they were living at home. And that house was just small. Like, it just felt like you couldn't, like, I needed space. I needed to breathe. Like, it was way too tiny. And with me starting a new job, I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to stay here and survive with all of us living at home. It's just chaotic. It's a lot. Yeah, so as soon as I got a job, I was like, I'm going to go. Even though my job was like, literally, it was like an internship, but I still moved out. That was such a stupid decision. I should have just done my internship and stayed at home. That's one thing that I would say is after you get a job, like, just work that job and live at home a little bit longer, save money, because you never know. You could end up liking the job, you could end up hating the job, and you don't want to be back in the same position where you have to move back home. And that's what happened. I moved out too early, and that caused me to have to move back home a second time because I got the job. I didn't really like it as much as I thought I would like it. And I tried to look for other jobs in my industry and I just could not find a job. And that meant that I had to move back home a second time. And I would say the second time my ego was hurt a little bit more because I'm like, why am I moving back home again? Like, I'm too comfortable with the idea of moving back home. And I just found myself in this situation again where I had no option but to move back home. And yeah, like I didn't really enjoy it. So that was the second time that I moved back home. That time though, I would say it was necessary for me to move back home. And at the time I didn't realize it, but like there's like a family situation that I ended up really stepping up and in for. And I'm glad that I was there. I'm kind of glad that the path that I was on didn't work out because I moved back home. I was able to just be there for my family in a way that I really needed to be. Where if I didn't move back home, and let's say the job would have worked out, I wouldn't have been able to step in and help as much as I did. So sometimes moving back home is to heal some, past traumas. Sometimes it's to be there for your family. Yeah, and also the second time that I moved back home, I would say one of the biggest pros for me was the fact that I feel like when you're older, like when you're in your mid-20s, you really appreciate the time that you spend with your family. So older Anifa was like, oh, I want to like do things like celebrate Thanksgiving. Like even though I don't care for the holiday, I just wanted to like cook for my family. Like I remember one Thanksgiving, like I cooked the whole entire meal, and I worked with some of my siblings to kind of coordinate things, and they helped me out wherever they could. And honestly, that Thanksgiving meant a lot to me. And you know, when I moved back home that second time, like there's a lot of things that I didn't want to take for granted, because I felt like I'm never going to be able to be in this space again where I could do this for my siblings. And of course, there is going to be those moments where I know that wasn't the last time. But when you move back home the second time, it's like you cherish the time that you're spending with your family more. Or yeah, like I just cherished it more, and I wanted to create memories, you know? And so it's no longer that you hate being at home. And of course, like maybe there are some things that are annoying. Like when I lived at home, I took on so much responsibility. Like it is annoying. Like that's one of the cons. Like now you know how to drive. So now you're like driving everyone everywhere. Now you're picking up this, going to do that. And it's definitely a bit more like draining, if like in terms of energy wise, like you have to put in more. But I do appreciate the time that I'm able to spend with my siblings a lot more than when I was younger. Also, I was doing research on moving back home, and research shows that 50% of people ages 18 to 29 moved back home in 2020. So if you're one of the people that moved back home in 2020 like me, you're seeing like there's a whole bunch of us that moved back home, and you're not alone. Like it's okay. Like that was a time that nobody knew what was going on. Like it was such an unpredictable time, and I feel like literally God said to all of us, like, sit your ass down and relax. And like that was a time that it made sense to be with your family. And anyways, and it also shows that right now 45% of those people are actually still living at home. So that number has only gone down 5%. And that tells me that like, even though like the pandemic, the impact has lessened, I feel like a lot of people are still struggling to get back on their feet. There's so many layoffs that happen on a weekly, monthly basis. And it's so sad because, you know, people are still having to resort back to like moving back in with their parents. Like on TikTok, I've seen people in their 30s, families move back in with their parents. It is a tough time. So if you're having to be in this position where you're considering moving back home, as much as, yeah, there's a negative side, like, yeah, you know, if you don't have the best relationship with your parents, it might not be the easiest of times, but there are also some pros. Being able to save money, being able to really figure out your path in life and redirect, you know, where you're going, spending time with your family. Like there are some pros. And even though you might think, oh, that doesn't mean anything, some of the pros that you didn't care about when you were younger, or that you might think you don't care about now, could be things that you just actually end up appreciating. Because living by yourself, it can be lonely, it can be expensive, it can be stressful, exhausting, like so many things. I mean, yes, you have your peace of mind and you have your own place and you can do whatever you want, but I feel like there's just like pros and cons to both sides. So now I'm actually considering moving back home a third time. And oh, this time my ego hurts even more. Each time I move back home, there is an ego thing, and I think it has to do with the fact that I do care about how other people perceive me. Unfortunately, I know I shouldn't, but it's just that thing, like that little voice in the back of my mind that's like, okay, Anifa, like, why are you moving back a third time? Why haven't you figured out your life? Why are you still in this, you know, phase where you're trying to figure things out? Like, it's kind of embarrassing. And it's okay to feel like that. Like, that's just how I feel, guys. That's just how I feel. Like, even though I know, like, okay, yes, I'm gonna enjoy living with my family again. Like, it'll be fun to spend time with my parents. I do want to figure things out. The first time, it was cute moving back home. The second time, cute. Third time, I'm literally gonna be turning 27 this year. I don't want to live with my parents a third time. I get the benefits, but I'm also not ready. And I'm just like, is this my only option? I need to also get to a point where I can survive and I can go through my problems and be okay and be able to stand on my 2 feet. And so that's where I'm at in life. So I haven't figured out, I might have to move back with my parents. I probably will have to move back with my parents next month. But this isn't one of those things that's like, there's a happy ending. I just feel like moving back with your parents during a midlife crisis is just something that happens and you go through it and you can choose to be very negative and like live in a mindset where you're sorry for yourself, or you can live in a mindset where you understand the situation, you can feel sorry for yourself. It's okay. Like, honestly, your emotions and what you feel and how you're processing having to make this decision, they're valid. But like, don't allow that energy to really like take over. Because actually what I didn't mention is both times that I moved back home, I definitely was in a post-grad depression or just like moving back home depression for like a month. In the beginning, you do feel like you don't have energy and you are feeling depressed and you are feeling sorry for yourself, but eventually you come out of it. So yeah, you have to move back home. It's just temporary. You will come out of it. You will survive. You will be okay. Focus on the positive. Really focus on the positive. Spend time with your family. Spend time with your siblings, your parents. Take this time to really make new memories. Don't allow yourself to just be in the negativity of it all. But also for us that have moved back home multiple times like me, I really do pray that we do get to a point where we can stand on our 2 feet and we don't have to resort to having to move back with our parents. So that's something that I pray for us. It's okay that it's happening. We're still very much recovering from a pandemic. People are very much getting laid off. Job opportunities are limited. It is a rough time in the world. So it's okay that we're going through this, but I really pray that eventually that things work out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope me sharing my story helped someone else. If you guys have stories about your moving back home experience, if you have questions that maybe I didn't answer in this video, please feel free to leave them below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye everyone. Good day in my mind, said to take a step out, get some air now, lay your edge out. Too soon I spoke, you'll be heavy in my mind. Can you get the heck out? I need rest now.